house that ate the moon. You never expect to find the real stories in towns like Launavale. They don't even show up on most maps anymore, just a blip between back roads, smothered in fog, the kind of place you stop in for gas and forget by the next county. But Launavale stuck to me like wet leaves. I should have listened when the gas station attendant told me to skip the hill and head back the way I came. Instead, I stayed. I'm a travel writer, a story writer, really. The kind who hunts for lost legends, forgotten corners, things that feel just left of reality. It started as a blog. Now it pays my bills. People like mystery, especially when it sounds like folklore, but only if you don't look too close. I didn't expect to find truth. It started with a story I overheard in a diner, 3 old women, leaning close over chipped mugs and a radio playing too softly to hide their whispers. I was at the next table, thumbing through my phone, when I caught a phrase that didn't belong in casual conversation. "The house that ate the moon," one of them said. That made me look up. They were huddled together, careful not to meet my eyes. One of them, the youngest, maybe 60, saw me staring and went quiet mid-sentence. Another muttered something in a language I didn't recognize. The third, the oldest by far, leaned in so close to the others I could barely see her mouth move. Full moon rises, the house opens, casts no shadow, that's when it feeds. They paid and left not long after, avoiding my gaze like I was contagious. I asked the waitress what house they'd been talking about. She stiffened, looked over her shoulder before answering. "Old place on Grey Hill. No one goes there anymore. Nothing left to see." Her voice dropped to a whisper, like she wasn't sure if she believed it, or just didn't want to say it out loud. "Supposed to be haunted. Some say cursed, some say worse." Worse? I should have stopped asking. Instead, I grabbed my recorder and hiked out before sunset. Grey Hill wasn't far, just north of the town. Past a cemetery too small to have a name, I parked where the road ended and walked the rest. The trees thinned as the incline rose, and the wind picked up with the kind of chill that doesn't belong in June. The house sat at the top like it had always been there. It wasn't grand nothing like the dramatic Victorian mansions you see in ghost stories. Just a sagging 2-story house with a steep roof, a porch eaten by moss, and windows that seemed more like closed eyelids than anything meant to look through. But even from a distance, I noticed something wrong. The moon had risen. The field around me glowed silver blue, trees cast thin shadows. My legs, my backpack, even the gravel at my feet of everything cast a shadow. Except the house. It stood in perfect light, but there was nothing behind it. No outline stretching across the grass, no soft distortion where its edges should fall, just bare moonlight, as though the house wasn't there at all. I walked closer. At 20 feet, the air changed. The temperature dropped, not sharply, but steadily, like descending into a root cellar. My flashlight flickered and died. My phone lost signal. My breath misted even though the night was warm. Then I heard it. The chewing. Wet, rhythmic, just beneath the floorboards. It didn't come from inside the house exactly, but from beneath it, like the foundation was gnawing on the land itself. I should have turned back, but I was recording. June 14th, 10:50, 6 p.m, I said into the mic, barely whispering. Grey Hill property, no name, confirmed. House casts no shadow, unexplained temperature shift, audio recording chewing source unknown. I approached the porch. The wood looked dry but swollen, like something had exhaled too much moisture through the cracks. The front door was ajar, not broken, just open, as though someone or something had left it that way on purpose. My fingers hesitated on the doorknob. It was warm. Not just warmed by the day warm, but skin warm, like the house was alive. Still, I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, my stomach turned. A wave of nausea hit me like vertigo. I dropped to one knee, and the chewing sound intensified, louder now, closer. I pressed my palm to the wall to steady myself. It throbbed. The house was breathing. I don't know how long I stayed like that, kneeling, ears ringing, eyes swimming. I tried to stand. My legs wouldn't move. And then, nothing. I woke up at the bottom of the hill, face down in the grass. My recorder was gone, my watch was cracked, my arms were covered in dirt, and my throat ached like I'd been screaming for hours. The moon was gone. No stars. No lights from town. Just me, the wind, and the shape of the house on the hill now, casting a long, cold shadow in the grass. I staggered back to my car and drove without thinking, teeth chattering despite the heater. I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I'd crossed the town line. Back in my motel, I found dirt in my mouth. Under my nails. In my ears. I stripped, showered twice, and still smelled something on my skin, lavender and mold, like old water and flowers left too long in a vase. I didn't sleep. Just sat by the window, watching the sky, waiting to see if the moon would rise again. The next morning, I returned to the diner. The same waitress was there. She gave me a tight-lipped look as she poured my coffee. "You went, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "You're lucky to come back," she said, not looking at me. "Doesn't always let you." She set the coffee down. Something small slid beside it. A photo, black and white, faded. The house, sitting atop grey hill. And in the foreground, a man I didn't recognize. Except I did. It was me, standing on the porch, smiling. I left the diner in a daze, the photo clenched in my fist, edges crumpled, fingertips damp with sweat. I didn't remember standing on that porch. I didn't remember smiling. And I certainly didn't remember anyone taking my picture. But the man in the photo was unmistakably me. Same jacket, same hair, though shorter. Same scar on the chin I got falling off a bike in 3rd grade. Same slight lean in the posture I'd been trying to fix since college. Only it couldn't be me. The photo was dated August 1912. Stamped in the lower corner, in faded red ink, were the initials GHS Grey Hill Society. I'd never heard of it, but it looked official, archival, real. I drove to the town's records office that afternoon. Small, barely a house converted into public space. It smelled of dust and mildew, and the one clerk behind the desk looked as old as the documents he guarded. I didn't ask about the photo directly, just said I was researching old properties. He sighed, stood, and pointed to a metal filing cabinet labelled Historical Residences, Outskirts. "Bottom drawer," he said, "but don't say I didn't warn you." There weren't many files, maybe 20 total. I flipped through until I found one labelled Grey Hill House. Inside were handwritten letters, newspaper clippings, 2 floor plans dated nearly a century apart, and a torn ledger listing names and dates. Most entries had a final column marked "Departed." Some were crossed out. One entry caught my eye. August 14, 1912, David K. Wren arrived alone, no departure logged. Wren, my mother's maiden name. I stared at the handwriting. It curled in an old-fashioned way, but I could almost believe I had written it. The last item in the folder was a photocopy of a pamphlet, brittle, ink, bleeding through, but legible. The Lunark Spire, to feed the sky that sees. Under the moon's full gaze, all illusions fall. The house is the mouth, the moon, the eye. We must feed what watches us, or be consumed by it. A cult, or something close enough. I tucked the copy into my bag, heart thudding like I was stealing something sacred. The clerk didn't stop me. He was too busy pretending not to watch me. That night, I dreamed of staircases. Endless ones, spiraling down, each step made of bone. I descended for what felt like hours, chased not by footsteps, but by laughter low, deep, echoing from the walls like the house itself found me amusing. At the bottom, I saw the house. But it wasn't on a hill anymore. It was suspended in the sky, beams dripping with ink, doors yawning open like wounds. And below it, 1,000 faces stared up, each one a version of me, older, younger, broken, smiling. I woke screaming. The mirror beside the bed was cracked. I hadn't broken it. The full moon was rising again. Only 2 weeks had passed. That couldn't be right. I checked the calendar, cross-referenced it with a lunar chart. But there it was, another full moon. A rare blue moon, the second full moon in a single month. The next morning, my notebook was missing. I found it under the bed, pages torn and reassembled in the wrong order. My handwriting warped into loops and spirals I didn't remember writing. One line appeared over and over again. It sees you best when you're afraid. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. Not properly. My dreams bled into waking life. I saw shadows flicker where there was no light, felt cold breaths on my neck in empty rooms. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back. Not for answers, not for the story. I had to go back because something inside me already was back. I returned to the hill on the night of the blue moon. This time, I brought nothing, no phone, no flashlight, no gear. Just me. The house was waiting. And it had grown. The roof was taller now, slanted at a sharper angle. The windows had multiplied. One of them pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. The porch was no longer rotted it, looked fresh, as if recently built. It cast no shadow. Again, I crossed the grass and stepped inside. No resistance. The moment I entered, my skin prickled. The house was warm again, not welcoming, never that, but aware, like it had missed me. The hallway stretched longer than before. The wallpaper shifted when I wasn't looking at it, directly shapes like mouths, like open eyes, blinked in and out of view. I walked. The chewing started again. Closer this time, underfoot. The floor vibrated faintly. I thought I might fall through, but each step held barely. I passed doorways I hadn't seen before. Some were cracked open, others sealed tight. Behind one, I heard a voice. Mine. Crying. Behind another, the sound of typewriter keys clacking rapidly, then silence, then something scraping claws across paper. Then I saw it. A mirror, standing at the end of the hallway like a warning. My reflection stepped forward before I did. Same face, same clothes. But the eyes were full moons. It lifted a hand. I didn't. It smiled. I didn't. It whispered, "You left me here." I turned away. The hallway shifted, became a spiral. No walls, just stairs now, descending deep into the belly of the house. 8 Stepfeldsofter. Warmer. At the bottom was a door. No handle, just a smooth circle etched with lunar phases. And a key. On the floor. Old, brass, heavy. Carved with a crescent moon. It felt warm in my palm. The moment I touched it, the door opened. Inside was a library. But the books weren't printed. They were skinned. Everyone bound in hide, their titles written in twisting, black veins. I reached for one. The title read, David Wren, Chapter 3, Regret. I opened it. Inside were memories mine, but wrong. In them, I saw myself returning to Grey Hill again and again. Different decades, different clothes, same house. Each time I came back, the house changed. Each time, it remembered me better. And each time, I forgot more. I dropped the book, and the library screamed. The walls heaved, pages tore, the chewing returned deeper, more desperate, louder than it had ever been. The whole room shook with the sound of teeth grinding through years. I stumbled backward, fell through the floor, and woke up in my motel bed, heart pounding, hands shaking. The key was still in my pocket. The town was quiet the next morning. No one looked at me. Even the sun felt dimmer. But I felt something else, inside me, like I'd brought something back from the house. Like the moonlight had carved out a piece of me and replaced it with something older, something hungrier. And I knew this wasn't the end. It never was. The house would call again. It already had. I didn't leave town. I told myself I would. Packed the car, filled the tank, loaded up on coffee and silence. But when I turned onto the main road heading west, I saw the sign for Grey Hill. And then I blinked. And I was back in the motel parking lot. Like the house had rewound the world 5 minutes just to make sure I understood. You don't leave. You rotate. I started researching the house the only way I could by digging into everything except the house. I looked up the names in the ledger I'd found at the records office. Most led nowhere. The rest were dead ends, literally old obituaries, missing person reports, and once, a gravestone that simply read, "She went too close. The sky took her." I scoured the county library for maps and land deeds. The property didn't officially exist. The land had changed hands dozens of times, but the structure on Grey Hill was never named. It was simply there, like no one had ever built it or dared to. The oldest mention I found came from a sermon printed in a 1792 local gazette. "When the watcher opens his eye, we must offer him sight. The blind shall walk into the moon's mouth, and only then shall the fields be spared." The watcher, the moon's mouth. I started drawing connections. Names, symbols, dates. Scribbles filled page after page of my notebook. I hardly ate. I forgot what day it was. My phone began displaying random characters instead of the time. Sometimes I heard the chewing again even while walking through town. The locals never reacted. That's when I realized they weren't ignoring me. They were waiting. I tried to confront the old woman from the diner, the one who'd whispered about the house. I found her again sitting by the church ruins near the cemetery, feeding birds that never landed. I approached slowly. She didn't look up. "Why me?" I asked. Her hand trembled as she dropped the last crumb. "Because you were curious," she said. "And that's how it starts. Has anyone ever beaten it?" She laughed. Not cruelly, just tired. "You don't beat it," she said. "You take your turn." Then she reached into her coat and pulled something small from her pocket. A photo. This time, it was of her, on the porch of the house, smiling. That night, the dreams changed. They weren't dreams anymore. Not exactly. They felt chronological, like flipping backward through someone else's memories. My hands weren't mine. My voice changed. My reflection shifted. And in every life, the house was always there. Sometimes a stone tower in a foggy field. Sometimes a hut surrounded by mirrors. Sometimes nothing but a door in the ground under a moon that moved like a heartbeat. I was always drawn to it. And I always walked in. I began recording my thoughts obsessively. Pages and pages of notes, symbols, phrases that made sense only in fragments. The same line kept returning in my handwriting, though I had no memory of writing it. The moon sees through you, and the house remembers. 3 days before the next full moon, I found the attic key on my pillow. It hadn't been there the night before. It was warm to the touch, not hot alive. I tried throwing it away, but it returned. On the sink, in the glove box. Once, I found it floating in my coffee. By the second night, I gave up. I knew what it meant. I hiked back to Grey Hill on the third night, under a sky thick with clouds. The moon hadn't risen yet, but the house didn't care. It had grown again now 4 stories tall, the siding slick with moisture that steamed in the cold air. Something coiled through the rafters like a slow-moving serpent. I didn't wait for a sign this time. I unlocked the door with the key and stepped into the dark. The layout had changed again. The hallway was gone. In its place, a spiral staircase that wound upward, impossibly long, each step whispering in a language I didn't know but understood. As I climbed, I passed doors with my name on them. Dozens of them. David, 1954. David, 1837. David, unknown. Each door throbbed faintly with heat. Each one whispered memories into my head-fragmented scenes of lives I had lived and lost. In one, I wore armor. In another, a wool suit. In one, I was a child screaming as the house pulled my father through the floor. Every version of me had come here. Every version had opened a door. And every version had fed the house. At the top of the staircase, I found the attic again, or what it had become. A black room, walls pulsing like lungs, and in the center, suspended by tendrils of shadow, was a mirror the size of a doorway. Not a reflection this time. A portal. On the other side, I saw the moon. Closer than ever. So close I could see its texture pulsing, its craters shifting like open mouths. And beneath it, Grey Hill. Infinite copies of it, spiraling outward like a reflection in cracked glass. A voice spoke behind me. Mine. You're the mouth this time, it said. I turned. No one there. Just a second mirror. This one showed the house from above, me walking in, me at every door, me climbing over and over in infinite variations. You understand now, the voice said. The moon doesn't rise, it feeds, and we keep it full. I stepped into the first mirror. Not because I wanted to, because I had no choice. Because the house had already swallowed me whole. Stepping through the mirror was like walking into gravity's mouth. I didn't fall, I unfolded. Every piece of me peeled into vapor, spiraling through a tunnel that wasn't made of space or air, but memory. My own, yes, but also others. Thousands, maybe more. I saw a woman in 1919 stitching her own eyelids shut before walking up Grey Hill. I saw a boy in the 1700s drawing a door on a tree and watching it open into moonlight. I saw myself, over and over. Each version a variation of the same sin. Curiosity. When I came to, I was standing in a chamber beneath the house. A place that shouldn't exist. A vast round room with a ceiling like an endless cathedral, full of veins pulsing with light. The floor was black glass. Reflections shimmered beneath it, faces, rooms, entire landscapes. It was like standing on the surface of a frozen lake under which all possible lives floated, waiting to be remembered. Across from me was a door. Etched into the wood was the lunar cycle, carved in exacting precision, new moon to full, full to dark. Beneath it, a single word. Remember. I opened it. And I was home. Not metaphorically my childhood home, the one I'd left at 17, the smell of burned toast, the uneven hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my brother tapping on his Game Boy through the wall. Every detail perfect. Even the books stacked the wrong way on my nightstand. My name on the school backpack, half faded. But no one was there. I wandered from room to room, empty, silent. Time paused. Then I looked out the window. The moon hung huge and yellow in the sky. And below it, Grey Hill. The house standing in place of our backyard. Smiling. Its siding wriggled. A long, wet tongue slid from the front door, licking at the grass. I backed away, but I was already inside it. The walls shifted. My room melted into a hallway. The furniture rotted and reassembled. Lights flickered and blinked out. The hallway stretched into a tunnel of black stone, the air growing colder with each step. At the end stood a figure. Human-shaped, but indistinct. Its face a blur, skin wrapped in layers of torn pages, each one etched with tiny handwriting. As I stepped closer, I saw the words. They were mine. Every journal entry I'd ever written, every draft, every note in the margins of my research, even the things I'd thought but never said aloud. All wrapped around this thing's body like armor. You gave them freely, it whispered, voice made of turning pages. The house eats what you forget. What is it? I asked. What's the house? It tilted its head. It is what is left when belief dies, it said. A mouth without memory, a memory without a mind. The moon? That's the tongue, it said. Then it leaned close. And you are the meal. I tried to run. The hallway stretched forever. The chewing returned. Only now, it came from inside my own head-grinding thoughts into mush. I tripped, fell, scraped my knees on a floor that pulsed like a heartbeat. When I looked up, I was back in the main chamber. But now it was full. A circle of chairs surrounded a hole in the center. People sat in each own dozens of them, all identical to me. Different ages, different styles, but the same face. Each one turned to look at me. Each one opened their mouth. And each one whispered, "Your turn." I stumbled back, but my feet no longer listened. The room tilted, the chairs vanished, and I fell down into the hole in the center. The fall lasted hours, years, lifetimes. I saw the house in every age, as a cave, as a shipwreck, as a lighthouse blinking at a black sea. I saw people worship it, fear it, feed it, and in each vision the moon loomed closer, like it wasn't in the sky at all, but under us. A giant eye buried beneath the earth, opening wider with every story forgotten. I hit the bottom with no sound. I was standing in a dark room lined with mirrors. Each one held a scene, a version of me writing this story. Some looked sane, others wept blood as they scribbled. Some had no faces. In one mirror, I wasn't even human, just a smear of light, writing in a language made of circles. And in the center of the room, the original mirror, the one I'd first walked through, only now the glass was cracked. Fractures ran through it like veins. I reached out to touch it, and it breathed. I was back on the hill, in my body again, but something had changed. The grass didn't move, the wind was gone, the stars blinked like dying embers. And the moon? It wasn't in the sky anymore. It was above the house, tethered to it by long strands of darkness, like tendons connecting bone to bone. Pulsing, watching, hungry. I stood. I tried to scream, but my mouth was full of dirt again. The chewing didn't come from the house anymore. It came from me. I didn't remember walking back to town. 1 minute, I was kneeling on the cold grass of Grey Hill, staring up at that pulsing, tethered moon. The next, I was in the motel bathroom, scrubbing soil from my tongue, from beneath my nails, from places I didn't remember touching the ground. The mirror wouldn't show my face. Just static, like a broken channel on a dead television. I stopped trusting my memories. I started writing everything down by hand. Names, dates, sensations. The last thing I remembered eating, the first thing I forgot each morning. The entries never lasted. I'd wake to find pages missing or worse rearranged, words rewritten in a jagged hand that I almost recognized, whole paragraphs describing events I hadn't lived yet. One page said simply, "When the mirror cracks, the mouth opens." Another, "Don't let the next one climb the hill." That phrase echoed in my head for days. The next one, "Who?" Then, as the full moon approached again, I understood. The cycle was repeating. The house wasn't haunted. It was a pattern, a ritual, a hunger that required story after story, life after life, always under the eye of a watching moon. And I had become part of the bait. 3 days before the next full moon, I saw them. A woman, young, early 30s, parked at the same gas station where I'd first heard the whispers. Her backpack had a GoPro strapped to the strap, a map of the area poked from her jacket pocket. I knew the look in her eyes. Curiosity. I followed her. From a distance, at first, she asked questions in town, got the same half whispers I once had. The waitress at the diner stiffened, just like before. She mentioned the hill, and I knew she'd go. That night, I stood on the porch of the house, watching the sky. The full moon rose, bloated and yellow like an infected eye. The woman approached, cautious but brave, boots crunching over the gravel like distant thunder. She saw me and stopped. "Hey," she called. "You know anything about this place?" I smiled, slow and tired. "Yeah," I said. "It's my turn to tell you." We sat on the edge of the porch. I offered her tea. She declined. She was bold, confident, told me her name Riley. She'd driven from 3 states away, chasing some regional folklore story. She wanted to photograph the house, record the local myths. I nodded through it all. I remembered being her. She asked if it was dangerous. I lied. "No," I said. "Just old stories. Nothing happens unless you go inside." She glanced at the house. Even under full moonlight, it cast no shadow. She noticed, but said nothing. Instead, she asked, "What's with the moon?" I didn't have an answer, only a key. I showed it to her. She held it, examined the crescent moon carved into its base. Is this part of the house? No, I said. The house is part of it. What do you mean? I looked up at the sky. The moon isn't watching us. We're inside its eye. She laughed, but didn't give the key back. I watched her walk up the steps. Her hand trembled as she pushed the door open. And then she was gone. No sound, no light, just absence. I stood there, alone, the night holding its breath. And I felt it, the release. Like something inside me unclenched. The chewing quieted, the static in my mind faded. The house had taken her, and it had let me go. I walked back to town. The stars were brighter, the wind warmer. For the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I was free. But that's not how this story ends. Because the next morning, I woke up in a room I didn't recognize. My motel key no longer fit the door. The town outside wasn't Lornavale. It was older, different. A man passed by and tipped his hat. His clothes were from another time. I saw a newspaper on a bench. The year was 1912. And etched in the glass of the motel lobby window, just above the number 1 in the address, were the initials. G.H.S. Grey, Hill, Society. I ran. Back to the hill. The house was the Reesum shape, same spot, but different somehow. It cast a shadow this time. The porch was rebuilt in fresh timber. A small sign hung near the door, the Watcher's Gate. And sitting on the steps was Riley. Only she didn't look surprised. She stood and smiled, handing me a folded sheet of paper. "You're early," she said. "The last you didn't show up for hours." Then she stepped aside. "Your turn," she said. I unfolded the paper. It was a photo of me on the porch, smiling, with the same cracked mirror glinting behind me, and the same moon now lower in the sky than it had ever been. I stepped inside, and the house smiled with me. The door closed behind me with no sound, no click, no creak, just finality. Inside, the house was no longer shifting or surreal. It was still, patient. It knew I was ready now. No more resistance, no more confusion. I walked the hall with steps that felt practiced. The wallpaper no longer pulsed. The chewing had gone silent. Instead, I heard something far worse. Typing. Sharp, deliberate keystrokes like an old typewriter hammering a rhythm in the dark. I followed the sound. It led me to a study I'd never seen before. One wall lined with filing cabinets, another with framed photographs, hundreds of them. Every frame held the same image. Me. Not just me as I am now, but versions of me in other times. Different clothes, different expressions, but always the same eyes, the same haunted, weary smile. At the center of the room sat the typewriter. Black, polished, keys worn down like teeth. A sheet of paper was already in it. Typed on the page. He returned, just like the others. He understood now. He would take his place, and the cycle would continue. I stared. Then, without thinking, I sat down and placed my fingers on the keys. They fit perfectly, like they'd always been mine. I typed. I don't remember deciding to. I just started, the way you breathe or blink. My fingers moved on their own. The words poured from my memories, impressions, dreams, fears. Everything that had happened. Everything that would happen. Every version of me wrote the same story. And every story fed the house. As I wrote, the room around me changed. The walls pulled back, revealing other rooms' identical studies with identical desks and identical me's, all typing in sync. The house wasn't a structure. It was a machine. A factory that devoured memory and spit out stories. Stories that others would find. That would lead them to Grey Hill. That would bring them here. I looked up from the page and saw a mirror on the far wall. It showed a figure standing outside the house in the moonlight. Camera in hand. Backpack slung low. Eyes wide with curiosity. It wasn't Riley this time. It was someone new. A man in his 20s. He was already taking the first steps toward the porch. The mirror cracked. I stood. The typewriter kept writing without me. I opened one of the filing cabinets. Inside were folders, each labeled with names and dates. One read, David K. Wren, complete. Another, Riley Thomas, in progress. And the last one, Isaac Morrow, arrived. I pulled it out. Inside was a photo of the young man on the hill. The caption underneath, "He won't resist. He's a writer." I left the study and returned to the hallway. The door at the far end was open now. Moonlight spilled in like liquid metal. Beyond it was the porch. And the man, Isaac. He looked up as I stepped outside. "Hey," he called. "You live here?" I shook my head. "I'm just the one who tells the story." He hesitated, then grinned. "Mind if I ask you a few questions? Only if you're ready to never forget the answers." We sat on the steps, the house quiet behind us, the moon pulsing above. I told him everything almost. Not to warn him, not to save him, but because the telling was part of the feeding. Every listener, every believer, every curious wanderer drawn by the tale was one more thread woven into the house's tapestry. I handed him the key when the time was right. I watched him vanish behind the door, and I felt the story slip from me again, as it always does. I walked back to town, back to the motel or something shaped like it. I slept. I dreamed of being other people, again. I dreamed of Riley, of the woman with sewn eyes, of myself, over and over and over, and of the moon, blinking slowly behind the clouds. In the morning, a letter waited under my door. No return address. Inside, a photograph. The house, the hill, and Isaac, smiling on the porch. Stamped in red ink at the bottom corner. Grey Hill Society, Archive 4581. I turned the photo over, written in my own handwriting. Your turn. The moon will rise again soon. And when it does, someone new will arrive. They always do. It's not the house that moves. It's us. The house only waits. The hill only calls. The moon only watches. But it always, always feeds. And I will be there. On the porch. Smiling. Waiting for the next one.